Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Unmuted. I know that you've been watching very closely what is happening in Israel, and so many of you are stunned with how the attack happened, how Hamas planned this, carried it out, and you've also become aware of how many terrorists there are that really seek to do us harm. We've heard from you on these, and many of you have said, well, what about the terrorists that are coming to the southern border? And why can't we get that border secured? Now, our unmuted guest today is someone who knows this issue inside out because he's worked it, he has lived it, he has been the acting commissioner of the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, and now he is the visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Please welcome Mark Morgan to our program today. Mark, we're delighted to have you join us.
Thank you for having me, Senator. This is obviously a very critically important issue for our country right now.
Yes, and it is a critical issue, and people look at this that has transpired in Israel and say, how could that happen? And then they look at our border and the number of terrorists that have been apprehended at the border, and yet they hear about the numbers of known and unknown gotaways, and they're saying, how could something like this happen, and is it possible that it could happen in the U.S.?
Senator, these are all great questions from your constituents. Look, the answer is absolutely. And this is what I keep saying. You just talked about a couple of stats. When I always respond to, you don't have to be a border security expert to understand that we have a national security crisis happening on our southern border. It's just common sense. You talked about a couple of very important statistics. Over the past 34 months under this administration, we've seen 1.6 million known gotaways. While at the same time, we've seen the highest level of apprehensions of aliens on the FBI's terror watch list, as well as the highest level of what we call special interest aliens at our border. Those are individuals that come from countries that we know sponsor, facilitate, and harbor terrorism, that we know our own intelligence community has shown us we believe pose a national security threat and risk to our country. In the past 34 months, we've seen those individuals from 180 different countries, Senator. There's only 195 recognized countries on the face of the planet. Yet every single day, we have individuals come into our border on the terror watch list, as well as special interest aliens. And the issue is, how many of those terror watch listed people are special interest aliens are among the 1.6 million known gotaways? This is exactly why we say border security is synonymous with national security.
You know, Mark, I was looking at some of these stats, and I saw that in 2019, there were 0 terrorist watch list reportees, 0 that were apprehended at the southern border. And I think they knew not to come, that under President Trump, under your leadership, if they were caught, they were not going to get in this country. And now, this year alone, we've had 169. And I know the month of October, there were 30 Iranians, 35 Pakistanis. You've got over 100 Russians and 2,000 Chinese. These cartels are global organizations. And these people from countries that do not wish us well are coming to this southern border. And these known terrorist watch list, the number 169, Mark, why does the Biden administration not address this issue?
Senator, just for a second, let me foot stomp on a couple of those statistics, because this is very, very important. In the first 34 months, the number of that we've apprehended on the known watch list is 278. Last month alone, Border Patrol apprehended more aliens on the terror watch list than the previous 4 years combined under the Trump administration. Senator, when are we going to wake up? What happened in Israel should be a wake-up call for 2 very important reasons. One, it shows us that global terrorism is alive and well. Islamic extremists that carried out these atrocities in Israel. They want to do harm to our homeland. That commitment has not changed. It is unwavering. And in addition to that, it showed a colossal intelligence failure. Look, I don't mean that for attribution. That was just a fact. So they either didn't have the intelligence or they failed to connect the dots of the intelligence they did have. And so right now, our administration, Senator, we have the dots. We know. But May of this year, the director of the FBI, during congressional testimony, said he's concerned about the southwest border as a national security threat. He told the Congress at that moment how Hezbollah is absolutely still committed to long-term contingency planning to do harm to the United States. DHS, just a couple of days before the October attack in Israel, released an internal report that said that they are concerned that terrorist organizations are going to exploit our southern border. Just a couple of days ago, the CBP office, Intel office in San Diego, put out a similar intelligence bulletin that they're concerned that terrorists, inspired by what's happening in Israel right now, is going to exploit our southern border to do harm to our United States. And yet this administration, Senator, they're not even acknowledging that correlation and that risk to our southern border. They haven't changed a single policy. I refer to it as cognitive dissonance, either through politics or ideology, that it prevents them from seeing the truth, reality, and fact. But one last thing, I get asked this all the time. Could something like that happen in the United States? Of course, of course. Look, I'm not saying it's going to be overrun similar, but what I would say, our border's already been breached. It's been being breached for the past 3 years. And so it's not a matter of if the threat is going to get here. Senator, I believe the threat is already here.
Okay, let me ask you this, Mark, because regularly when we're doing telephone town halls and when we're across the state talking to people, their question is, who is going to do something and what would be the right thing to do? So if you were still in charge and you were looking at this problem set, which that open southern border is, and as you're saying, you've got the dots, but not the connectivity, where would you start to get this back under control?
Yeah, Senator, that's the question. I love this question. The first thing that I would do is I would actually listen to our own intelligence community. I would listen and I would see how what's happening in Israel is connected to our national interest. So I would make sure that I would connect the dots. And then I would start doing something. I know this is crazy, but I would start with enforcing the law. I would be honest with the American people. I would understand that border security is synonymous with national security. And then from there, the first thing I would do, if I had the ability, I would declare a national emergency. I would increase our military deployment to the southern border to immediately secure that border and gain operational control. I'm not saying that would be permanent, but I would say that's what we need immediately. And then I would look to a policy, because this really is a policy issue. I would reinstate the Remain in Mexico program to deter. I would reinstate the transit, safe third transit countries with all 3 Northern Triangle countries. I would end catch and release. I would increase our interior enforcement to actually allow ICE to do their job to remove people that are here illegally. And the last thing that I would do, Senator, is I would fundamentally shift and change how we go after the cartels, because how we've been doing it for the past 30 years of using a criminal prosecutorial method has failed. We need to go after them with the same level of commitment, tenacity, and government resources that we do terrorist organizations.
Well, I appreciate that. Now, I know our audience would like to keep up with you. So I know they can find you at heritage.org. Is there anywhere else they can find you?
No, that's the place. And I appreciate that, because part of the problem, and I know you go all over the country as well. And this is, look, I'm not trying to tell people how to think, but what I am asking people to do is get informed, get educated, become knowledgeable, because I know if you do, that will push away that cognitive dissonance, and you'll see the truth, reality, and fact that our national security is at risk because of this administration's open border policies. Heritage is a great place to go to get that information.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate that so much. And our audience will always find me on social media at Marsha Blackburn. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Senator.